Hey, StoryMakers. Welcome to the pod. I'm super excited to have you guys here today. I'm here with my friend, Tom Cozens, who is in the UK, Camden. We're super pumped up. He is the founder, director, all the things of Owl in Space, super creative. And we are just so delighted to have you. Thanks, Tom, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mel.
Well, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, the power of art and storytelling. And here in Storymaker Land, we are very tactile. We create zines and all sorts of things like that. But Tom has given us a bit of a plot twist, and we got to work together this last year, and it was so fun. But he shepherded us through our first narrative that we ever have done in a filmy space. And so I'm just so excited and delighted that you get to meet him because Tom is an incredible creative person and has really married and adopted gospel language and storytelling in a way that isn't obvious, which we love, and is beautiful and hits people right where they need to be hit with it, in the heart and in the mind. So Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, just tell Storymakers about you. Where are you? How did you come to faith? All the things.
Great, man.
Ready, go.
Mel, that's a lot of questions.
Sorry. Where are you?
I'm a 35-year-old lad, so I've already had a few years, and I feel like I've had quite a few life stages as well. So I'll try and work backwards. I'm in Camden. I run a film company here, a film studio called Owl in Space. It's now sounding. I started that about 4 or 5 years ago with a couple of people. We have a great team here in Camden and further afield, so a couple from Oxford or that direction as well, which is great. How did I get there? So working backwards, I started Owl in Space 4 or 5 years ago. I was at the BBC before that. Before that, I studied theology at Oxford. And that was for a year. I did 2 years as a pastor in Cambridge. I studied engineering at Cambridge, did my master's there as well. And before that, I was a missionary in Liberia. Rewind, I became a Christian when I was about 12. And I think my faith has gone through a few different stages. And I think really Owl in Space is the result of a few different life experiences that at the time did not make sense. And I think the wonderful thing about God is the way he brings these strands together in ways that you deem completely unfeasible. I mean, if you told me when I was a pastor that I'd end up doing this, in fact, if you told me I'd end up doing this only a few years ago, I'd have been like, how on earth does a Tom get there?
It's wild. I mean, God's story is such a long story. And every time and every person we meet here in Storymaker world, when we take a look back, there's so many things that don't make sense, and then they make sense. And you just think God's imagination is well beyond our own. And so it's just, I can only imagine that. And also, let's just mention that Tom is really good at playing. I know that because you don't rollerblade. Is this what it is? Rollerblading? Is that? Do you have is there like?
I totally rollerblade. Yes,
it's so fun.
I'm that one guy in the skate park that all the skateboarders really dislike because they can't predict where you're going. They're used to skateboards that go in a straight line, and they're like, "Why is he turning? What is this turning thing he's doing?"
Well, I think play is so important if you are a storyteller. If you're not playing and your whole world and job is to tell stories, I don't know how, it comes really across through the play. I think that's all key. That's all Play-Doh a little bit on the play, right?
Yeah. Between shoots for your film, Mel, I was out on the streets skating. So New York I'm not sure if you're aware, but has the wildest skate scene. On a Wednesday night, I think it's a Wednesday night, there were 300 plus skaters on the streets.
No, it's a whole thing.
Really famous ones as well, some really well-known ones out there that I met. One has I think the most viewed skate podcast in the world. I think he's called the Stuttering Skater. Really funny guy, really cool guy. And I got to skate with him and his chums, and it was wild. So it was a bit of a Jerusalem of skating, if you will.
You're at the Holy Land. Yeah, it's just only in New York. Well, what I love about Tom's story is that it's meshed up with science and art and all the things and theology. I mean, how good is that? It's art, science, and theology all meshed up. So Tom, tell us a little bit about how Owl in Space came to be. This is a cool studio that is telling story, but in a way that really gets you going. I have loved watching what you've got out on the latest. It really gets you thinking, and what is the meaning of life? But it doesn't leave us in the chaos. It points us towards the cosmos. So tell us a little bit about that play.
So engineer, Cambridge is very, very technical. So it was all maths, very little. I don't think I touched an engine once, actually. It was basically all maths and physics. And then at the end of that, I had the debate about where to go. I was looking at becoming a technical barrister, and my vicar said to me, Tom, we have a job opening and we think you're the right person. 7 people have applied, but we haven't responded to any of them because we believe you're going to accept this job, which is kind of high pressure. I debated. I had about 24 hours to debate before they opened it up to the rest. And I felt a very clear, through prayer, very clear push towards being a pastor, which was a mondo jump from being in this very technical space to spending all your time in people's problems. And I can tell you, Mel, students have a lot of problems. I did, and it helps you empathize greatly. But I think it's probably reflective of how I treated engineering and then how I treated theology. When I was doing engineering, this is no exaggeration, I think I spent more of my time reading philosophy than I did engineering. That's the wonderful thing about a place like Cambridge. The libraries there are,
oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
You can just go and you can find knowledge there, and it's such a joy. And there are people. Everyone wants to talk about stuff. It's really cool. So I read a lot of philosophy, and I'll show you the philosophy I read. And then when I was doing theology, I really focused in on the science edge. And it always felt like I never sat, academically speaking, never sat happily in either court. And I think it didn't really make sense until I started reading Pascal. So this guy, this is a great story. So
we love to drop a good reading list, and I knew Tom was going to bring it. So yes, show notes.
Do you know the story of this book?
No, tell us. I want to know.
Okay, really fun. Well, I suppose mortality involved, so not the funnest, but also fun. So Blaise Pascal wrote his greatest work, but didn't finish it. He died, and his family found all of his notes on the floor, but they were notes that were all separate. So separate little notes that he'd written. And when you read them, they're utterly phenomenal, but they're individual thoughts. That's why it's called pensée. But what the family did is string them together. So they tried to make sense of them. And so we actually have a few different orders of play, 2 of the most famous, of how this book should go. And depending
choose
on
your adventure, and depends on your mood and where you want to land.
Exactly. But he goes through a whole load of different topics. He was a proper polymath. But depending on the translation that you have, or the version that you have, his thought number 245 says, rough translation, there are 3 sources of belief: reason, experience, and tradition. And to me, this summed up a feeling or a sense that I'd had for a long time, that there was this logical, reasonable part of my faith that I wanted to cultivate. You might say it's apologetics, something along those lines. But there was also this deeply experiential part that I thought my experience of being in quite academic churches, is the experience part wasn't necessarily taught from the front, but in pastoral meetings, I was 20, 30 hours of pastoral meetings a week. You really saw that, like, how is the Christian life lived out? How is it lived out? Is it experientially true? Does it do what it says on the tin? And I think that's another way that we come to believe something to be true. And the final part is built up knowledge. So tradition, the Bible, and the traditions that we build up over time, over who God is, how we talk about God, these kind of things. And I think this intersection of the three, and this difficult tension of belief being about all three, it's not just about Enlightenment thought. It's not just about it being logical. It has to be lived out. And I suppose my generation, I'm the middle of the millennials. We were all about utility, right? Utilitarianism, is our fave. It's the question we're asking: is it useful?
Yes.
The question is it useful? And I do really think that the Bible has a response to this, but Pascal had a response to this as well.
I love that so much.
True, it has to be useful, and it's almost like apologetics was a thing that I saw that was really popular. I think it still is popular today, maybe in a slightly different form. But you had this debate with the new atheists 20 years ago, Richard Dawkins and the like. But you've also got this experiential element that I think has become increasingly important, especially with the rise of postmodernity and the rise of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Is it experientially true? They're probably asking, is it beautiful as well? They're saying, does it lead to a beautiful life? And these are both, I think, more in the experience end. But I did see a need. But I think you could argue that postmodernity swung too far the other way. So it said it's all about experience, and there's no objective truth. Postmodernity said the Enlightenment gave it a go, the modernists gave it a go, but they didn't come up with a grand narrative that covered everyone. What about the people on the fringes? What about all the people that this isn't true for? Postmodernity said those fringes are the most, and so it moved much more towards this experiential end. And I think my hope, and now I think what I'm seeing, is that we could integrate as Christians in our communication, in our art, we could integrate all three. There's reason, there's experience, and there is this built up knowledge, this tradition, theology, if you will. And so for me, those three prongs make up now my practice.
It's so cool. I mean, I think, when you think about where your creativity lands or the medium in which you're going to share what God is calling you to share, it seems that your medium is film, and it seems to be the place where all three of those things can be experienced or realized behind the camera versus other sorts of mediums. So how did you land in? Okay, so Tom's a scientist and he's a theologian, a little pastoring in between, and then how did you land with a film company? That's really not this. Those aren't all the same things. How'd you get there?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I regularly ask myself that question. So I think the simple answer would be prayer and God, and I can outline what that actually looked like. But for me, I was at the BBC. Their practice is really good, right? They're the best in the world, best in class at doing what they do. They do regular quality familiar, and they're brilliant at doing that kind of communication. But whilst I was there, the Department for Religion and Ethics became the Department for Ethics and Religion. So you can see the reordering of importance there for them. And they were not keen on doing anything about religion, anything about metaphysics. They were much more interested in sociology. So I think they were reducing very complex philosophical problems down to sociological problems. So, they wouldn't talk about the ideas of a religion. They would often talk about the practice. So it would simply be, should you wear the cross at work? These kinds of ethical questions, which I feel like the majority of my Christian friends weren't interested in, which is no wonder that the department shrunk. And I think for me, there was something that I couldn't talk about, and there was something fundamentally missing from the practice. And so I said to God, what's next? Is there something here? And I looked around for organizations that were doing this, that were thinking about how to do really good crafted quality communication that was artistically integrous, but also spoke of like deeper philosophical theological truths. And I was struggling to find spaces that did that in a way that wasn't. And I suppose, for some reason, Christian communications or Christian film has become known for being a certain type of thing. And it concerned me that there at that point there didn't seem, or from what I could see, there didn't seem to be organizations that were really pushing ahead in this regard. It didn't seem like we were at the forefront of creativity. It felt like we were a few steps behind the most creative directors. And I think as a result, many Christians who were artistically brilliant were ending up in workplaces where they couldn't share the depth of their faith. It was a place where they said, right, I'm going to have to separate.
You lose, people begin to lose integration. And then I think you also lose like the beauty aspect and that freedom, because everything needs to be buttoned up in a different kind of a way. And so, I mean, what I love about, Tom and I got to work together in this fall. And what was so special was that there was a real freedom there for creativity to exist within the boundaries of the story that we're trying to communicate, and letting the story be what the story was, but not having to control it. And it reminds me so much of Rick Rubin in the Creative Act, where he talks about that we are being conducted and we're not the conductors. And so I felt like in your own approach to directing what we were doing, and I'd never done anything like this, I just kind of was like, I'm gonna let him conduct. But there was you had this faithfulness in your own approach to story, of knowing that there's a greater source, that we are part of the ultimate story maker. There's creativity, that all is synergy and it's there. And that you have a joy that you get to tell the story. And it doesn't have to be, in this specific kind of a way, which I think is what lends itself to like real beauty and collaboration. Tom, have you, I used to play in an orchestra when I was in middle school, and it was so fun when you actually played together and it did well. It's like, there's nothing better than that. Is in your directing and creating and shaping Owl in Space, does it feel a little bit like that, like getting everybody together and creating something beautiful for the conductor?
Oh man, that's a great allegory, metaphor, Mel. Really, really powerful. So this is actually a question we wrestled with within the organization just a couple of weeks ago. So we've been doing a reassessment of vision as we push towards we have quite a few projects that are currently in flow, and a few which are early development, and trying to make sure that we're getting this vision on point. And so there's quite a famous painting from an artist called Caspar David Friedrich. Are you familiar with? So he did the famous piece of his is The Wanderer, and I think it's like an Instagram profile picture for so many people, which kind of feels a bit sad. But that's the famous one. It's where he's standing on a rock and looking out across this wispy, cloudy landscape. It's utterly beautiful and captivating. But there's his first painting, which is my favorite of his works, is called Winter Landscape. And in Winter Landscape, there's two mirrored parts. The first is a man who's lost or has limited use of his legs, has dropped his crutches and is sat against a rock looking up at a cross in this white barren landscape. And he's desperate to be at the foot of the cross, so desperate he's just flung his crutches and he's just sat there gazing at the foot of the cross. And then at the other side of the painting, you have this cathedral that's distant in the mist. And I was praying over this. It was such a powerful painting to me, and there's a few things that I've drawn from it, but one of the key things is it really has started to inform my artistic process, because I think on the one hand you have this relationship between this single person and the cross, the sinner and the cross, right? And in the other you have something that is built by possibly hundreds of hands over many generations. This very intimate moment, and then this kind of terrifying, almost like cosmic horror-sized cathedral on the other hand. But they're both paradoxically two parts of the same aspect of God. But to me, it also informed how we make, because in one sense, creativity and the artistic process is about the artist and the cultivated relationship with God, just the one-on-one. But in the other, it's building a cathedral, which is built over generations and built by hundreds of people. And I think I acknowledge that in my own process, I've probably relied a lot on myself, and possibly in unhealthy ways, that when the artistic process doesn't go right, or I'm like, it's not quite right, what do? I sit alone for a couple of days, and I'm like, come on, give it to me. Give me I know the answer. I must be able to find it. And I think, one is, as you say, authorship. As I author a thing, I am myself being authored. And as such, that will imbue the work that I make. But the second is that these beautiful cathedrals cannot be made alone. There may be one person's vision, but it's not. It's many people's vision, conducted by the God that has the wider, more I was going to use this book actually. Rudolf Otto's Idea of the Holy. It's how Owl in Space actually started, and it tried to grasp this paradox of the intimate and the infinite. Rudolf Otto's singular idea in this book is that God, all religion starts with this experience of God, which is both infinite, terrifying, and intimate, deeply personal. And I think this is also the artistic process that we need to be able to try and construct something so magnificent that it can even start to resemble the tiniest part of God, but at the same time we're cultivating the singular artist, and it has to be done in collaboration, and it has to be done singularly with God as well. Both are true. And I think certainly for our practice, it's really important to get that collaborative element. And too often I've fallen into this: you're an artist, go author it, go alone, pioneer, and not enough have I done. Let's collaborate, let's build this together. And I take the challenge, and I think as we get onto bigger, larger, more magnanimous projects, it's no longer feasible to do it solo, and it's certainly not feasible to do without God. And so there's this double challenge: cultivating it with God and then cultivating it with team as well. And I think Rudolf Otto's book is definitely worth reading. It is the origin of the name Owl in Space as well. Little owl, big space. I also think that the other thing that really inspired me in this matter is I would read the best people in your field. So Bresson is an incredible cinematographer, and he wrote Notes on the Cinematograph. It's appropriately French. It doesn't really have much order to it. It's very thoughtful, and lots of just individual thoughts that are kind of wild. But this book really inspired me because it taught me more about craft. And it's interesting that artists often don't talk about the ideas behind their work. They talk about how they made them.
Mm.
It's almost
And
like an inductive process. You discover as you make, and it's as you say, play. It's all about this playful attitude to ideas that results in the thing.
well, and I think was it David Lynch who said that ideas come to you and then they need to be like engaged with, or they'll float to somebody else, maybe it belongs to somebody else, but things come to us and then we either engage it or we don't engage it. But I think too, you're so collaborative. I mean, just an encouragement to you. When we were all working together, I mean, listen, StoryMakers, we did not know each other. We barely, we were doing a kind of guerrilla warfare 2-day project thing. Tom came from the UK. No one really knew each other, and we made something. And what was so special, I think what was really incredible was the posture. And I think the posture is so important for all of us who are thinking about like how we parent or do anything that we do. But this posture of submission at the start of the day and for one another. And this is another thing David Lynch said too, is that negativity kills creativity. And so there was just a spirit, I think, in the room between all members that were there, that there was an openness to, give notes, but in the most kind and gentle way, that were able to be received of maybe this is a better idea or whatever. But I think that, that's where the collaboration and the beauty comes, when you're able to move in that way. And so it's, we have our ideations and our singular thoughts about what a thing should be. But when other people get in the mix, and even when they make it messy, you're like, well, maybe this is how it was supposed to land. I thought it was supposed to go this way, and that was annoying. But I think maybe the thing is what it's supposed to be in the very end. And so I think that that's really, part of the whole process. But yeah, so, Tom, we always love to ask, like, what has captured your gospel imagination? I like to think about the books that I read as a kid. What brought you into other world and began to open your imagination, that it's not just like what's in front of us, that's in front of us, that there are worlds beyond us?
There's a few things that have really driven me forwards in this regard. I think, again, I just want to mention like ideas of God have definitely, so Rudolf Otto's idea, I think, is deeply connected to me. And I was definitely reading it at a time when I was really considering the nature of God. And I was actually in the Arctic at that point. So freezing cold, barren landscape, and hearing this, like the terror of God, the terror at the scale of the universe, was very powerful to me, but also the deep intimacy that you see in the nature of God, both of these things. So that to me was very inspiring, that idea. And I think it was I think it also connected deeply with a cultural idea. And to me, there are these entry points into culture, like beauty, morality, human value, love, like the nature of love and relationship. These are things that everyone feels and experiences. And I think the gospel has this incredible way of answering those questions, and I think in the most profound ways. Right. And I think so Lewis's idea, to jump it back to Lewis, that we must make men want to believe it's true, make men want it to be true, and then show them that it is. And I think certainly, I think part of the artistic process is showing the beauty of the gospel. Part of the gospel process, the artistic process for me, is showing that it's true. But I also think, and this is probably something that I would love to add to Lewis's phrase, maybe a third point, is that show them where the gaps, show them where it hurts. Because I think most people I work with, most people I meet, I run Alpha at my church, I run a small group here in my flat. Most people who are coming into the church and experiencing things for the first time, they have this intuitive knowledge that say love is real. love is a real thing.
Mm.
That reality at its most fundamental is about relationship, above and beyond anything else.
Yeah.
And as such, they but may not have a justification or a way of explaining why. And I think there's these intuitive bits of knowledge I find very powerful in terms of storytelling. And
It's
seeing
the
how
image bearing nature of who we are. You know, I think oftentimes churches or maybe artists who are Christians are trying to connect. We skip over what you're describing as like just our image bearing nature, that we long for creativity and beauty and relationships. I mean, God says the first thing he says that's not good is that someone's alone. We're meant for each other. It's like who, you know, it's in the DNA. And so, yeah, I love where you're headed.
Yeah. I think in terms of gospel imagination as well, I would say, to take it back to Lewis, if we're going to go down that line, his use of allegorical fantasy. So the way his narratives work are, you start in the real world, he takes you on an adventure to another world, and the lessons that you learn in that space are then reapplied to the real world. There's someone on my team, who's an Oxford English grad, who's really is a genuinely world-leading thinker on C.S. Lewis. Was at the C.S. Lewis conference recently and gave an amazing address. But this idea that we almost need Narnia, we need those worlds in order to play with those ideas with less consequence, in order to be able to come to a conclusion that can then be applied to the real world. And this maybe is why, you know, there's a strong narrative amongst parents at the moment, and you know, I would agree with much of it, but the narrative is, you know, mobile phone bad, or virtual reality bad, and relationship and interacting good. And I do think that we need to pay attention to the worlds that our young people, well, me included, my young person, probably not.
You're so young.
But the worlds that they are inhabiting. And I mean, computer games, the scale of the industry versus film is bananas. This is where a lot of people are. They're in these immersive worlds in which you can die and your death does not have consequence. And those narratives, the way those stories are told, the kind of beats they go through, are really important for what we bring back to the real world. What are we consuming in those spaces? And I think for me, one of the reasons I love film is, one, it allows me to work in that trifecta of reason, experience, theology, as it forms a coherent, truthful belief system. But the second is that it's a form of escape. And I think escapism is problematic, but escape is not. I think I want to affirm some elements of this desire to find stories elsewhere, or stories where the consequences are different, where we're taken into a fantasy world where we can understand a truth in a new way that we wouldn't be able to in the real world.
Yeah, well, that's what
has that power. You know, a parable loses its power if you try and extract. If you just say that's what the parable means, and then it's not just a metaphor, and that's really important. The parable holds a sort of power that allows the Spirit to minister as it pertains to truth in our lives. So we receive something from it, which you wouldn't necessarily be able to say in a purely didactic text document. And, you know, if that was possible, Jesus would just have done talks.
Yeah, well, but no, he didn't. He painted the picture for us. And that's, we talk about the storytelling animal all the time with Jonathan Goschel, and he talks about us being addicted to Neverland. And the power of story and play is really what you're just describing too, is a place to practice. So like practice ideas, or practice like, is this going to work? I don't know. You know, I'm thinking about this thing, but that's what's so powerful about play and having that opportunity for it, and story allows for it, and being able to sit and immerse yourself in a film allows you to think about the things that are, you know, are bothering you, where God is shaping or changing something in you, and you can sort of play it out without really like the consequences as you just described.
Yeah.
I love also, Tom, what you just mentioned too. It's like this assumption, like, well, when people come to church, a friend of mine used to always say, it's like, especially in New York, if people are in church, then they've walked on glass to get there. And so, it's like, it's not cultural in New York. I'm sure the same is true in London. Like, you don't have to go to church to like fit in with the world. Exactly. If people are going to church, it's because they've got a pain point. And your third point with the C.S. Lewis, I think, is so important for us as we think about ministry and our kids and their long story, that we all experience pain, and we want them to know like who to go to and what stories we can rely on. And so, Tom, I was just wanted to ask you this question: like, what story has like assured you and like helped quiet the storms of your life as you've kind of moved through life as a Christian, maybe scripture or something, but what are the stories or the words that have calmed, it could be film, it could be anything. What have quieted the storms for you and assured you of the promises?
Good question. Biblical and otherwise. Is that okay?
Yeah,
so
I like the categories.
Yes. Okay. Biblical and otherwise. So I think if I could do it this way, I do have favorite bits of the Bible, and all the bits that I return to the most at certain times in my life. And I think certainly at certain points, Philippians, which I'm currently doing in my Bible study group, actually, has been an amazing place to return to, because Paul very succinctly outlines some gospel truths in there. It's a lot of sound bites. It's nice. He did a good soundbite piece. It's a very simple, didactic way of engaging with it. It sums it up nicely in 4 chapters. And I think I would often go there first if I'm telling someone like what's it all about. Maybe a gospel is a good place to start as well. I might take them to Luke or John. But I think at certain points in my life, certainly Ecclesiastes has rung true. And I think wisdom literature in general.
Poetry does something to us. Really it sticks to the bones.
Yeah. And I think probably at university, Ecclesiastes 3:11 is probably the verse that I return to most, especially when people didn't know God and were exploring. God has set eternity on the hearts of man. It's like an early stage, lovely verse. But I think that it's a sense that I had and then discovered more as I studied theology and as I moved into film, like the intuitive nature of this stuff. Like that we and some would say this is not the case. I don't think I've met someone who doesn't intuitively really know that the love is real, morals are real, human beings have intrinsic value, that there is something in beauty that is divine and authored. There are these ideas that we intuitively know, and it's often just about exposing them. So I love Ecclesiastes 3:11 for that reason. I think one I'm really, really into at the moment is Jonah. I love that book so much. One of the most important marketing firms in the world, Mel and Tom, recently released a report that says we're in the age of re-enchantment, or the age of enchantment. And the biggest brands, Kit Kat, are now investing in enchanting stuff that has a spiritual element. It's wild to me that the brands are the first ones to be getting on this. I'm like, come on, Chrisos, this is your vibe. Certainly Jonah has this enchanting element about it. And Jonah ends, you mentioned all the animals, and I really love the way these animals teach Jonah different lessons. Almost like this the protagonist's journey through the belly of the beast. But I love that there's so many things. So one, the fact that it feels like the story is leading up to this major point where there'll be the conflict between Jonah and Nineveh and the king. But then Nineveh's just like, sup, yeah, you're right, sure.
Yeah, good. We're
Sackcloth time.
accept.
Yeah. It's like, what? Was that like a really long process? Did it just happen? Was Jonah just like, hey guys, God's like, stop doing all that stuff? And they're like, oh, sure. It's just kind of like weirdly anticlimactic. And it spends then the last quarter, instead of dealing with, what would normally be Act 3, it's kind of like storming the castle, battle the giant. Yeah. It's like, it spends it with Jonah and a worm and a plant and like basically Jonah processing his trauma. And it's so interesting. Well, trauma, I mean, obviously being sucked in by a whale and wild journey. But like, I love that Jonah then says, reinterprets everything that's happened. He's like, the reason I didn't want to go is that I know that you're merciful, that you would have forgiven all these peeps. He's like, the reason that I didn't want it, it's not, he was afraid that God would forgive them.
Yeah, no,
and
I mean,
that's wild that his heart would go there. And he's like so angry about it that he wants to die. And then God's like, should you be that angry? Is it really right that you be that angry? I care about all the people in Nineveh. And then not the film. I want to I am writing a screenplay at the moment. I really want to do the story.
I want to watch this.
It ends with this line where it's like, all these people and the animals too. And that, I don't know why, but for me, that really struck a chord, because the animals are God's creation too. And you think that the line is just going to be, there's loads of people, they needed to convert their practices, they needed to stop. But actually it was about saving these animals from malpractice. It was saving creation. There was something much bigger that was going on. And it's like the created order in all of its facets. People, animals, plants are all interacting with Jonah in this. It is this existential fever dream of a book that I loved a bit. It's so silly, but also so amazing. Not silly in a derogatory way.
No, I know what you mean. Playful. I mean, we're doing Jonah too, and we have this. Our illustrator Justin did this incredible. He's in sketch phase, but he's got the worm and he's got the tree and Nineveh, and we always think about the whale, but it's really the end, which is most captivating of the whole thing. It's like, well, this is what it was really. It's all about, and that's, we all relate to Jonah of like who should be in, who should be out, and our own desires to be the conductor in all things. And it's not good for us. It's not meant. That crown is too heavy for us to bear. So Tom, before we roll away from Storymaker Land, I want people to be able to jump right into your world, because you are creating an enchanting space of beautiful film and storytelling so that people can connect the dots that their image bearers are connected to this conductor. Where should they land? YouTube, on the Webby? Where would be the best place for them to discover like this arc and beautiful way of storytelling, and how they can share it with their congregations? That's what's so cool. I mean, if you want to get in deep with your congregation or really like spark curiosity, I think this is a great place to land and just get people thinking.
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, I thank you so much as well for hanging out. It's been really fun. I think in terms of where do people go, we started up a YouTube channel, which is more cinematic meditations on the big questions of life. But I think that's an important part of what we do. I think that's a really big space that we want to enter into. But I think one of the things that we've been doing for a good while now is producing documentaries and drama shorts that you can find on the website. So you can go through the website and find them there. which is outinspace.com. And I think if you're interested in actions, one of the things is that we are, if you're in filmy land, I want to hear from you. If you're a Christian
Yes.
and if you're not Christian, I'm interested. If you're interested in this stuff, I want to hear from you, and I'm really keen on collaboration. That's how we've met some of the actors that have starred. David Jesse starred in one of our earlier dramas. He was in Stellar as well, one of the scientists in Stellar. He was brilliant, passionate Christian, brilliant actor. And it was just amazing to collaborate with him. This recent project, again, we had Christians enter our space, and we're interested in collaborating and got on board with this screenplay that we made. So the last one we made was called The Virtual Llama.
So cool.
It's about virtual existence and kind of toys with this idea of why you might become a virtual being and whether that adds to or removes humanness. And we've actually done, off the back of that film and a few others actually, so it's done well at festivals. It won a Best Sci-Fi at Poppy Jasper in the US, and it's been accepted into quite a few festivals. So we've done a great festival round, and now we're running events. So we've run a cinema event where a lot of young people, in collaboration with The Way, who are another great organization, we created a cinema event that a lot of young people came along to, and we just had this film discussion interaction around the ideas, and it was really powerful. And we're going to release something about how you can run an event like that. We've also had my vicar got in touch with me after we came to the event and said, I really want to run this as an entry point into Alpha. Yeah. So I want to run a film day at church, and as everyone came in, they got glow sticks that were related to whether they wanted to be a virtual or a real being.
Yes, no, it looks so cool from afar. Very StoryMaker vibes. Yeah, all the play.
And it was really playful. And honestly, and we didn't get onto this subject, and I think maybe for another time, but Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they gave the best responses. My gosh, like when I say the best, I don't mean they were the best of everyone. It was just, they were really cool. Their responses were really profound, and we had a couple of tables of youth that kept on feeding back, and you could see that, like, I don't know, hearts, minds lighting up and being excited about God and how God really does have a response to the question of, is a body important? Do we need bodies? Right?
Yeah.
Right there in Genesis, it's littered throughout the scriptures that a body is a fundamental part. It's inseparable. The discussion about whether we're a brain or a mind or a body or a soul or a mix of those things, this kind of Platonic view of that was a really exciting concept for them as well. And I think I would really love to make, and we are already in the process of making a few more actually, but of these theatrical level films that do exactly that.
I mean, I think they're so powerful. That's the topic of the pod today is like the power of art and storytelling. Art is the back door of the heart. It's a great way to start conversations. And as you mentioned, Gen Z and Alpha, like I think oftentimes people post-millennial may feel a little detached from knowing how and to connect, and like, how do I connect with young people? Or even like you said, vicar, we have clergy, all the same. But I think anyone in that, space who's looking to like, how do I really connect with the young people or whatever? It's like, it's through story, it's through art. And you all have created a great vehicle for that conversation of enchantment to begin. And it's a great catalyst. So Tom, we're so happy to have you. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And we cannot wait to make more things. We did Lucy together, and you'll hear more all about that. Lots of love, guys. Thanks, StoryMakers.